Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network, and today's topic is fear of annihilation. I think it should be quite an interesting conversation. This is something I encounter with lots of clients, um, in that we identify with our limitations so often. Good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. So good to have you here with us this morning. So we're talking about fear of annihilation and how we associate change with maybe disappearing because we believe that we are our limited beliefs and behaviors. So anyway, we'll get to discuss that in a minute after we get present. So let's just take a moment to presence ourselves, and let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, your molecules, your electrons, and creating this brilliant beam of light from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's just gently press our palms together. Softly rub your fingers against your palms. Feel that sensation. Feel the texture, the pressure, the temperature, and allow that sensation to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. So welcome. We're talking about fear of annihilation. And it's so interesting when it's so clear that we have certain patterns that are eating us alive, sometimes literally, patterns of anger and rage and vengeance and grief and sorrow and despair. When we have these patterns and we've had them for however long, regardless of how dysfunctional they are and how aware we are of their dysfunction, we often find deep resistance in the face of changing those things, of those things being released, because they've been with us for so long. They've been so deeply entrenched in our sense of who we are that letting go of them somehow feels like we might die, like we might cease to be, that we might disappear. And I've had conversations with folks over the past couple of days about this notion of disappearing. And it's so paradoxical that in the process of our disappearing, like when we get out of the way, when we're engaged with others, when we get out of the way and we disappear, that's when we really show up. So like being willing to forget who we are to be who we came here to be, that's what it's about. And part of the quote unquote forgetting who we are is being willing to release these patterns that we've believed were our intrinsic being, because they're not. The patterns are overlays, right? So as we release more and more of those patterns, as we get out of the way, we leave room for the expression of the life we came here to express to flow through more freely. So Rosalind says change. What is unchanging is our mind chasing safety. But then in the unchanging, the mind, but then in the unchanging, the mind then wants something new. How does one weave between or uncover truth? Well, so your premise of what is unchanging is our mind chasing safety. That's a really interesting premise. And I think that the antidote for chasing safety is trust. You know, that when we are able to experience a deeper trust of ourselves and of the universe, then the chasing of safety becomes less of a drive. Good morning, Lisa. So good to have you here with us. Welcome. We're talking about fear of annihilation. You know, that the thought that we might cease to exist if we didn't have the limiting behaviors and patterns that we might have. And the irony is that that's when we begin to really more fully express the essence of our being. So, so Rosalind, to continue with chasing safety, and then as the mind finds some kind of place of safety, looking for variety, right? That's, so how do you weave that balance? Well, I think that what we get to understand is that life is ever changing. You know, it's not fixed. We may have a sense of continuity, but it's kind of an illusion. It's kind of sorting for the things that are the same, so that we have this illusion of predictability, right? When life is in its fullest expression, there's a flow. There's a flow. And when we experience suffering and resistance and anguish, that it's something that we're creating by trying to hold. So pain is kind of inevitable, but suffering is another story. You know, suffering is a function of our holding. And what I notice is when people are in a state of fear, when we're fearful, our tendency is to cling, to your point, Rosalind, trying to find safety. Our tendency is to cling to the known, regardless of whether that provides safety or comfort. You know, oftentimes the things that we're clinging to are the source of our sense of lack of safety. So, you know, it's a tangled web we weave, I guess we can say. So, it's so interesting. So, for instance, I was talking with a client who has had very low self-esteem and who really interacts with life through the lens of what's wrong with me, or and from that lens there's always an expectation or fear of messing up. You know, so did I say the right thing? Am I going to say the right thing? What's the right thing to say? Do they like me? What do they think of me? What's going on? How did I show up okay? So what is happening is that all this life energy that could be going out into the world, into expression, gets focused back in a way that's paralyzing and very self-destructive. And so through that lens of something's wrong with me and what's wrong with me, there's a constant self engagement that undermines undermines the ability to really be to really allow the light from inside to shine, because it's constantly being brought back. It's constantly being internally focused. And so how does one, if that's the case, how does one see your way forward if the light is always focused back in and it somehow manages to turn to darkness, right? So anyway, it was interesting in looking at, well, what if you were sufficient just by virtue of being? Just by virtue of who you are, without having to prove anything to anybody. What if you were just fine? And the prospect of moving into that space of being okay, moving into the space where there wasn't this constant expenditure of energy trying to monitor and control and contain whatever this force was within them that they believed to be less than or inadequate or insufficient. What would it be if you didn't have to do that anymore? And then what arose was this fear of disappearing, because that's who they knew themselves to be. That's how they knew to conduct themselves in life. And without that, what would life be? Would I cease to exist? And I don't know if you can relate to that or not, but I can tell you that that is not in any way an uncommon fear. It may sound kind of on the spectrum of bizarre, but it is a very common thing that I'm noticing with people, that when we have these patterns, being insecure, for example, when you entertain not being insecure anymore, what are you, right? So if who I am is insecure and then I'm not insecure anymore, do I disappear? And the truth is that you actually the essential you actually begins to appear. But it takes releasing the clenched fists and holding onto those patterns that are so destructive, that are so constrictive, that are so limiting. It takes letting go that grip to be able to be coming from the inside out rather than outside in. And I'm wondering if this makes sense to you guys. Yeah, when we recognize I'm not my behaviors, I'm not my beliefs, I'm not my emotions, I'm not my history, I'm not my family, I'm not my genealogy, I'm not my biology. When we recognize that all of those things are elements that of our experience and perhaps of our expression. We can perhaps recognize that they are not fixed identities. And it's so interesting how we grasp for identity. You know, who am I? Who am I? And we want to define who we are. And in trying to define who we are, what we're doing is we're limiting our possibilities. We're limiting our possibilities unless we can find a definition that allows us something like, I am my possibilities. You know, I am spirit in physical form. I am life expressing itself through me. You know, there are ways, there are some identities, so to speak, that we can manufacture for ourselves. Again, they are manufactured, that are more expansive. Rosalind says, I experienced wanting to identify with who I will be after I got divorced. I'm recognizing I wanted to identify with what I would be. I understand that, and that's powerful, Rosalind. You know, as long as we allow that to be a living process, that identifying with who you would be or who you will be or who you intend to be or who you imagine yourself to be, that is a relationship held with open hand. That we don't find ourselves clinging to that. And here's why. Here's a conversation that I think exemplifies that. Let's say we're building a business, we're building a brand. Let's say we are our brand for so many healers and teachers and celebrities. They are their brand, right? So let's say, you know, you create this brand, you have a certain look, you have a certain persona. And that look and persona is something that feels really expansive to you when you start. And then over time, let's say your perceptions about things change. Your beliefs change, your desires change. And you have this persona. You have this brand. So where at first the brand became a tool to be able to expand your reach, after a point, that brand may become something that's constrictive to you. Then what? Do you constrain yourself to that identity? Or do you allow it to be more fluid? This is an important question, because you know what we start out with in terms of strategies in our lives. This is like a thing that goes through on many different levels. Strategies for survival that we cultivate as children can be helping to save our lives as children. And then, for instance, children are seen and not heard, right? Maybe if you spoke up as a kid, you would have really negative consequences. You know, maybe you learn to navigate a volatile parent, and you learn to do that by staying out of the way, by being invisible, by not being heard or seen. But then as an adult, while that was a life-saving strategy in the circumstance you grew up in, as an adult, that strategy could be keeping you from accessing the things that you desire to nurture your vitality and your life. It may stop you from being able to have an interview for a job that you really want to have. It may stop you from speaking out about something that moves your heart deeply, right? We've all experienced the, I don't know what the right word would be, um, but the transition of something that was positive into something that was negative. I mean, think about, having one piece of candy could be a delightful treat for the senses, but if you eat the whole bag, all of a sudden, or if you can't stop eating the candy, then it's not a treat anymore, right? And so we become very identified with these patterns, and we believe that they are who we are, that they are our being, that they are truly our identity. Whereas identity really truly is just a tool. It's just a tool. And when we can utilize that tool, that's great. But when it uses us, not so great. If I am restricting myself from doing things because it doesn't fit with who I believe I am, then that can be problematic. If I believe I'm not worthy, then I can't do certain things. I can't step up to try certain things, right? If I believe that I'm incompetent, then how am I going to let myself do something I haven't tried before? Right? It's going to constrain me and constrict me from exercising options. It closes options off, right? And so, what the point of these conversations is very much about being able to allow ourselves to create something truly new, because we are being called to do that at this time of our human and planetary evolution. Good morning, Gia. So good to have you here with us. Welcome, welcome. We're talking about the fear of annihilation and the fear of disappearing. When we let go of the ideas of who we believe ourselves to be. And the thing is, we are being called now to imagine and bring into being a future that doesn't have a linear inception. We're being called to create new possibilities, not from the past, but from the possibilities of the future. And in order to do that, we need to get out of the way. And when I say get out of the way, that's when my personality, my beliefs about who I am, my beliefs about what my potential is, my beliefs about what my past tells about me, when I get out of the way, that's when life gets to really express more purely through this vehicle that I am. If we are instruments for the song of our soul, then when that instrument is clear and the flow is able, if it were a wind instrument, the flow is able to move through it, that's when we have our purest expression. That's when we are most truly, truly who we are. Like really are and this is what we get to practice, is we get to practice how to get out of the way, how to get out of the way, how to let our stuff get out of the way. And I was talking about a client who is leading in life through this something's wrong or I'm going to mess up lens. And that's very much in the way in every interaction that this person has. So when we let that stuff get out of the way, when we realize that life isn't about us, that life is about being that free expression of the instrument that we came here to play, the instrument that we are gifted to allow life to flow through, then life changes. The quality of life changes. The experience of life changes when we allow ourselves to be that song. No less than that, and no more than that. To just be that song without all the overlays of all the limits and all the constraints. When we allow ourselves to be that song, that's when we feel most alive. Hello, good morning, Elaine. So great to have you here with us. Welcome. Lisa says, my mother died from esophageal cancer. My cousin recently pointed out that my mom didn't tell her story. She kept her mouth shut, hence blocking the throat chakra. Yes. Yes. People, it's interesting. Lots and lots of people have issues with expressing their voice, have thyroid issues. I've had thyroid issues, finding our voice. Cancer is also something typically very connected with anger. So maybe the anger and frustration of not being able to express herself could have contributed. So I'm with you there. Anyway, I gotta run. I am Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. I go live each weekday morning here on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page. I love our morning time together. I'm so grateful to you. And I hope to be back here again with you really, really soon. Until then.